Buongiorno, Rudy Kennedy. Buongiorno, Rudy Kennedy. Very pleased to meet you.
Was sprechen Sie? English?
It's probably better if we speak English.
English?
Is that okay?
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Here I went with very mixed feelings because here was a man, a relative of one of the top guys at IG Farben. And there was this big camp called Auschwitz-Monowitz where we were living or existing, and we found that they were owned by IG Farben. There were thousands of camps, and practically the whole of German industry was being fed by slave laborers. It wasn't just the SS in their black uniforms who were giving us a hard time. It were German companies.
I hope you understand that I consider our meeting not only important, but extraordinary. My sister and my mother were gassed the same day. My father stayed with me, and obviously he must have known something because he kept on saying, you have to say you're 18 years old. I was 15. And there was a selection, and my father and I got into the working camp. We called it Buna. Well, he didn't live very long, 6 weeks.
They killed him too.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't work anymore, or what?
Yes, he was, well, he blamed himself that he did not take care of his family. He should have got out of Germany when there was time. His last act, really, as a father, he managed to get me to a working commando, so I had a chance to stay alive.
The mother plant of Auschwitz was BSF, not
Was BSF?
Yeah. I have been 10 times to Auschwitz during this from March 42 to December 44. I think this was the last. And they are all noted in little Taschenkalender, which I had, so I can give you all the dates exactly when I've been there.
So this is a book given by IG Farben as a diary?
To every year to thousands of people, no?
Yes, yes. And it's 1942?
No, 42. And here is...
So on the 30th of April, went to Auschwitz.
Where was in Auschwitz.
And
he went in the night. I went to Auschwitz by train. Where was in Auschwitz on the 30th. I was home for a weekend.
Can you remember seeing the crematoria? Did you smell some of the terrible?
Yes, I saw the pipes, no? He smoked. Everybody talked about it. There was nothing to hide.
Did you know about the gas chambers?
Yes, we knew about the gas chambers at the end of 43.
Yes, we did. And the chemicals for the gas were also produced by IG Farben.
Not by the IG Farben directly, but a little firm which was, I think, if nearly 50% are IG Farben. They will deny it, but I'm sure they knew.
He felt unhappy about himself. I had some empathy with him. I couldn't be too tough. I'm sure it must have been difficult to face me.
The World Tonight. Good evening. This is Isabel Hilton. A decision this week by the German Constitutional Court may at last open the way for tens of thousands of former slave laborers in the factories of the Third Reich to pursue claims for compensation through the courts. Some 10 million people from all over Europe were used as slaves in factories owned by companies like IG Farben. Thousands have never received a penny in compensation. Many big companies like Volkswagen and IG Farben's successor companies, Bayer, Hearst and BASF, could now face claims.
I'm Rudy Kennedy.
Rudy Kennedy, now a successful businessman in Britain, was as a teenager a slave laborer in Auschwitz.
I was born in Silesia, not far from Auschwitz and very near to a town called Breslau. In 1941, the Jewish school was closed. I had to go to work and worked in the armaments industry till 1943, March 1943, where we were all transported to Auschwitz. My mother and sister were murdered the same day, gassed and burned. My father and I were selected on the infamous ramp and allowed to go to work for IG Farben.
How old were you?
I was over 15, 16.
I spoke this evening to Wolfgang Trautwein at the German embassy in London. It's been put to us that the German government has resisted paying these claims on the grounds that there is no peace treaty to end the war.
The war has been over for 50 years, and now we have a cooperation in Europe for the last 50 years, and we don't talk about the war anymore. But I can tell you that there is not a single case in history where 50 years after the end of the war, still the question of reparations is being discussed.
This one over here. The committee's got to pay. I cannot afford more. No, you can't. You can't. I know you've got the proof. You've got the source. I am still.
Roman Halter played a very important part in the startup of this slave labor association. He knew a lot of people. It was very important that he and I were together on this. He's an artist. He has a way of putting things I could never do. Whereas I'm more of an engineer, you know, it's got to go by list.
You see some old men here, but at the time we were young, of course, teenagers. Of course. We lost our parents, we became orphans, and we were literally on our own. Now, we have to make a distinction between directed labor and slaves, as we were, condemned slaves. We were condemned people. And we were allowed to work until we could work no longer, and then the death sentence was carried out.
The German tactics, one can read them, are as follows. At first they don't answer when you apply. They delayed. Eventually when they answer, they raise quite a lot of red herrings. They employ very cleverless lawyers, and that's cheaper for them than paying out compensation.
They are using their own crimes as an excuse for not paying now, because they say since a Zwangsarbeiter was not in a voluntary relationship of employment with the employer, therefore he was not liable to pay insurance contributions, and therefore he's not liable to receive any pensions now. The question is whether one claims against the German government or whether one claims against the industry, the successor industries.
I think the claim should go to both.
It can do no harm.
No, it's a political action is needed, because if you go to the courts, it
Yes.
will not happen. I'm sure of that.
We have to call ourselves an association for the claim of slave labor.
Okay, yes.
Because, you know, then
I wasn't, yes.
Yes.
The committee I wasn't very keen on, actually.
Pardon?
Committee has
No. Committee means sitting and doing nothing.
Yes. That's why I say we the other side. I changed that slightly. Did you notice this?
Yes.
So that I make it a joint effort.
7, British Midland Flight DG836 is now ready for boarding.
Peter Gingold is very, very active in feeling that this company must disappear from Frankfurt. He lives in Frankfurt. To him, it's every day like a thorn in his side.
Rudy Kennedy.
Freut mich sehr. Und daran hat die IG Farben wie kein anderer deutscher Konzern, ich sage wie kein anderer deutscher Konzern, ihren besonderen Anteil. Also ohne die chemische Industrie, ohne IG Farben wäre der Zweite Weltkrieg unmöglich gewesen.
Aus unseren 1000 Menschen, die wir angekommen sind, 430, genau 432 männliche Juden ausselektiert. Natürlich unter dem Gesichtspunkt älter wie 16 Jahre und nicht älter wie 50 Jahre. Ich stand neben meinem Bruder und ich war gerade 16 Jahre alt und sah die Gefahr, dass man mich noch zu meiner Mutter oder zu den Kindern und Müttern hinschickte. Und so habe ich mich auf der Rampe um 5 Jahre älter gemacht.
Der Name ist genau der richtige Name dafür, der Liquidation Anteilsschein. Denn wer einen solchen Anteilsschein besitzt, hat einen Anteil an der Liquidation von Millionen von Menschen, an der die IG Farben beteiligt waren. Und das muss jeder wissen, der im Besitz eines solchen Anteilsscheins ist.
So you're smarting yourself up, Rudy, are you, for this? Well, it's important. I think it's more difficult to shut somebody up who looks the part. I feel awful. I feel this brings back memories I'd rather forget about. I didn't feel like this yesterday. I feel like this this morning.
Es gibt Regeln, an die man sich auch
Es gibt Regeln und das sind diese Menschen hier immer noch nicht entschädigt.
Das ist eine ganz andere
Das ist keine andere Sache, das ist
Wir müssen die Politik entsprechend anfordern, dass diese Dinge geregelt werden.
Deswegen stehen wir hier.
Und nicht den Polizeibeamten, der hier steht. Der kann das nicht regeln.
Solidarisieren sich mit uns.
Wir haben einen Auftrag. Wir haben einen Auftrag, hier zu erfüllen. Den werden wir wahrnehmen.
Man sich den Namen von dem Mann feststellen, dass er gesagt hat, dass die Leute stinken. Das ist eine Beleidigung. Das hat man in der Nazizeit zu Juden gesagt. Juden stinken und sind die Ratten. Wollen Sie das nicht aufnehmen von dem Mann, was er gesagt hat?
I have a message to the shareholders to realize that this company was part of the murdering machine of the Third Reich. I returned to Auschwitz with 2 of my children and found in the document center the exact date of my father.
After Nuremberg trials, the company was dismantled, and this rump, still called IG Farben, was to be liquidated fast.
IG Auschwitz hier und heute, Mörder fordern ihre Beute.
Here they were 50 years later, still doing business, still buying and selling, and the shares also changed hands.
kein Mensch.
Weil sie mit Blut ihre Geschäfte machen.
Also ich persönlich mache keine Geschäfte.
Ich nie eine gemacht und trotzdem.
Ich bin weder Mitglied der Nationalsozialistischen Arbeitspartei gewesen, noch heiße ich die nationalsozialistischen Verbrechen durch. Lassen Sie mich jetzt bitte rein.
Ein Gangster, wenn Sie da mitmachen. Das ist ganz einfach.
Ich möchte mich mit Ihnen auf der Straße nicht auseinandersetzen. Würden Sie mir bitte Zutritt verschaffen?
Lassen Sie bitte den Herrn rein, ja?
Bitte? Auf geht's. Sicher hier wieder weg,
Können die richtig umlassen vor die Erde. Nein, wir sind Gas.
To get into the IG Farben shareholders meeting, you had to have shares. That was your ticket to get in. Somehow, Gingold provided me with one share.
Hier vorne haben Sie Zille? Ein Telefon.
Ein Telefon. In Auschwitz habe ich gefunden. Mein Vater wurde von Buna überführt, denn er hat nicht mehr gut arbeiten können.
Ja.
Das war seine Nummer. Ich habe die nächste Nummer drauf. Ich lege die nächste. Und das ist von Auschwitz-Buna, die Überführung. Und hier ist dann ein Tag später ist seine Todesschrift. Das ist ein...
Was heißt das, die Totenliste? Oder was?
Das ist die Totenliste, ja.
Die aufgeführt war, schlimm, ne? Ja, ja.
Also ist von Buna weg, weil er nicht mehr arbeiten konnte, oder gut genug arbeiten.
Ja, sicher, das ist
also das
Tragische an der Sache.
Danach habe ich dann angefangen, das zu denken.
Ja.
Also ich kann nicht sehen, was...
ich meine, ich persönlich bin ja in einem Lebensalter, der mit den nationalsozialistischen Untaten eigentlich oder ich sag mal, für mich heute Gott sei Dank nicht mehr in Verbindung zu bringen ist. Ja? Insofern finde ich das, was der Kohl mal gesagt hat, die Gnade der späten Geburt. Ja? Das ist wirklich schön. Obwohl ich ja nun hier tätig bin, das wird ja immer gesagt, ich persönlich missbillige auf das Schärfste diese nationalsozialistischen Untaten. Das muss eigentlich jeder denkende und vernünftige Mensch tun.
It was a bit of a surprise to me because I expected to see very old people, shareholders, and they were young people.
Es wird kein Fernsehen und keine Medien zugelassen.
And eventually I got up, and although I had my speech in German prepared, I tore it up and started speaking in English.
My name is Rudy Kennedy. I was born in Germany, and in March 1943 I was taken to Auschwitz. I was working for I.G. Farben. Most of you probably know the situation I found myself in as a 15-year-old. It was certainly not planned that I'm alive. If you want to laugh, it will distress me even more. I have to tell you, there's blood dripping from your share certificates.
Having worked in IG Farben in Auschwitz, in the electrical commando, I was looking at drawings quite often. I noticed that quite a few had BASF logos on the side. That stuck in my mind. And therefore I decided to go and see them.
Guten Tag. Ich habe einen Fax geschickt an Herrn mein Name ist Kennedy. Ja, ich habe gehört, dass Sie wahrscheinlich später sind. Haben Sie was dagegen, dass ich bin der Begleiter, Luke Holland.
And I questioned them about the relationship of BASF and Buna and Auschwitz. And he said, of course, we are a completely different company. That was a long time ago, to be quite separate. So I said, well, I've heard at a meeting, the AGM, that actually some of the pensions for the German technicians who worked at Buna will be coming from here.
Ich war hier mit meinem Freund hier in Frankfurt und sehen Sie das bitte durchschreiben lassen, wenn Sie sind he would like to stop them.
Of course, we don't get any pensions because they claim it's got nothing to do with them. It's a new company. If we want any pension, we should go to the German government. I'm hoping that Roman and I, who sort of running this together, will have some success by. We're not ready yet. We're not moving yet. We at the moment we are taking information. Yes.
Then we'll decide. But you think, in conjunction with that, we can have the publicity, we can...
That's not very...
Well, I think it's very simple. Yeah. We've come here not to ask for your charity, but we've come here to tell you what we're doing. And I think that is the right, dignified and robust way of approaching the ambassador.
That sounds right.
We come to see the ambassador at the German embassy, and we're going to acquaint him, if he doesn't know already, that we are carrying on with our campaign. The leader is...
not the leader, Roman, co-chairman. Well, we hope it will be pleasant, that they will listen to us and pass on the message to those who deal with compensation, and that we will get the payment plus an apology, because it's overdue.
I think he said a few things that he's seen that we are serious, that we're doing things. And I think he will report, in my opinion, look, these guys are embarrassing. They're not going to give up. They're surrounding themselves with important people, and they insisted seeing. And that's quite new. Nobody else has ever done that. That's what he will say. And they come with well-rehearsed arguments.
Introduce Rudy Kennedy. He's a former slave labourer from I.G.Farben.
His most recent book, which came out just 2 weeks ago, is a history of forced labour in the Volkswagen works in Nazi Germany. As you see, it's a massive tome.
Dealing with the history of the German industry during the Second World War in general, one arrives at the impression that the managers and the leading employees alike were doing their job without any attention to the political or ethical deliberations, having been influenced by internalized professionalism without looking at the fate of the workers, the compulsory workers. But the reason why I don't like to use the slave labor, because it's totally unused in the scientific terminology in my country and in the adjacent countries.
I mean, the Germans have reinvented Slaven. I was a Slav. What rights did I have? So what was I? I was a condemned to death Slav.
You were a concentration camp.
Condemned to death.
Not necessarily.
Look, I'll show you this thing. I don't know whether you know this. I have the German thing as well, which was, can you read this? I'll give you this piece of paper. You can take them both, yes?
But you know, we shouldn't overstress the terminology.
No, I'm not sure, but I will tell you why we are slaves. Look at this here.
Well, I know, but I mean the same, you know, but I don't use the term because my science doesn't use the term. It's really nonsense to talk about it.
My body, unfortunately, felt to be a slave at the time. It's obviously very awkward to deal with the period of that time. And I can understand this.
I've got problems myself, because I can't believe what has happened, although it happened to me, because it's so unbelievable.
I want to ask you just to read the book and later on to make your opinion whether I try to whitewash things, which is certainly not true or not. It's not a question which term I use. That's just nonsense. Yeah. And if you take, for
instance... You didn't say anything about the Ruin home in your lecture.
About
tonight.
what?
The Ruin home and the 400 people who were killed. The children. Why didn't you mention that?
Because the children... Well, I can't mention everything. That's all.
You didn't think that was as relevant as the B-103, the technicalities. You were taking away the human dimensions to make it technical.
That's not true. That's not true.
This is the white box.
Stop that now. This is the white box. I don't want it. I want not to talk about this.
You speak English?
Nein.
Ich will was übersetzen auf Deutsch. Nein, aber ich brauche ein deutsches Wort.
Ja.
Und zwar, ich will sagen, für mich war es hier sehr erfreulich, aber nein, es war berührend. Kann man das sagen? Nein, ich will sagen, dass es mehr wie erfreulich war. Deshalb,
ja.
Wie sagt man?
Ergreifend.
Ergreifend, ja? Ja. Ist das gut? Ja. Kann man das benutzen? Of course, when I came to England eventually, the first thing I had to do was try to learn English. Find a job. Then I started as an electrician. Ich spreche Deutsch, aber viele Wörter fehlen mir. Nein, ergreifend. I don't think one can ever forget what happened, but try to put it aside. I said I've got these two brains. One is the brain which happened to the war, and my new brain, where I only have the good things.
Nur ganz kurz Aufmerksamkeit bitten. Hallo, darf ich nochmal Aufmerksamkeit bitten? Unsere britischen Kollegen wollen sich verabschieden und ich möchte Ihnen ganz kurz hier nochmal das Wort erteilen.
Danke hier, dass ich Sie noch aufhalte vom Café. Ich will mich nur bedanken für die Hilfsbereitschaft, die ich hier gefunden habe. Für mich war das etwas unerwartet und sehr ergreifend. Unsere Initiative ist nicht gegen Deutschland, es ist gegen eine immer noch historische Ungerechtigkeit. Deutsche Hilfe und Solidarität ist kritisch für uns und nicht nur symbolisch.
I met Dr. Karl Brozek of the Jewish Claims Conference, a very important man with great connections with the German government, and he could obviously have influence. Tried to convince him slave labor was an issue and we should be really doing something. He wasn't very receptive.
Hello, Rudy. How are you? Hello.
We can't promise people that we will succeed.
8:15 and it's time that we start the meeting. So can I please ask
And they get very frustrated and unhappy.
give a report?
Can you tell me, I'm naive there, are there any Holocaust survivors who are actually part of the negotiations with, or the negotiation with the Claims Conference? Are there any of our boys, of our Holocaust survivors, are they taking part of it?
I am the Claims Conference.
You are. How strongly do you represent us?
As strongly as any other survivor, as any other one, anybody else who is on the Claims Conference.
Some of us have organized ourselves into committees. We want really to press what is due to us. We don't want to cause discord amongst us. What we would plead from everyone here, including you, Mr. Chairman, to support us fully, that there should be no waves coming in that are different intentions.
You come along and decide to act on their own volition and say this is what we want to do because we can shout louder and we are going to get results and therefore we do it with us and forget about anybody else and we don't want any discord, but this is precisely what you're doing. You are causing discord.
Please let somebody speak, for goodness sake.
The problem with the Claims Conference is, and why they're being attacked
because they've acted over years as a secret society.
I'm sorry.
Not the Porcupine Society.
I personally am really very, very grateful that we've got several people who want to fight on our behalf. It is possible that we may never get anything, but if we do, more power to their elbows. Work together.
Hey, Freddy. It's really like a family.
Yes, it is. Yes. Well, I think you couldn't carry on like this if you wouldn't know each other so well.
Yeah. The next thing would be to find a lawyer, get somebody who's going to get this going, get the action going.
You were too late.
Yes, I thought so. Hello. Hello. Wrong order? You are Mr. or Mrs. Sturman.
Mr. whatever. The claim we're planning on making in America is the Alien Tort Claims Act. And that's an American law that says if a tort was committed against an alien in another country, and there's no chance of justice happening in that country, then they can sue in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Are you saying, in fact, that if we claim sue the United States, because we cannot claim sue UK, that can be done?
Yes. Yes, it's made to protect aliens.
Yes.
And it's recently been used for slave labor in Burma. It's a very nice little law. They say we overpaid 100 billion marks already. Now that 100 billion marks is the only household amount that's discussed cumulatively. If they say they spend 2 billion marks a year on space agency, they don't say they've done it for the last 40 years and therefore they spent 80 billion. But they didn't, to use the term cumulatively is not fair. I mean, if you take even if it was 100 billion marks, which it's not, that's 2 billion marks a year. And they spend 2 billion marks a year on their space agency, and the most successful thing that's done is shoot a rocket up in Germany that crashed in France. I mean, to say, what's 2 billion marks a year? It's nothing.
Would you, for instance, represent us? Because, you see, we have a will to fight, but we haven't got the knowledge. We haven't got the knowledge of Germany. We haven't got the knowledge of law. Yeah. You would be just the right person for it. We'll give you all the backing, all the backup. And we have roughly 150 members.
Yes, that's something that I could do.
Yes.
So I got
now, you would take it on.
Yes, that's what I'm looking to do.
Now, on what terms would you take it on?
Amazing. Amazing person.
Good.
So what do you think, gentlemen?
That we'll be very popular from now on.
More than popular. No, I think we found the, what's they call it, the modus operandi.
All right. Well, once again,
bye. Take care, yes?
And you. Bye.
My wife, Kitty, she felt that I'm not the person I was before. I used to avoid these issues. Suddenly I have to deal with it. It's like a mania. She said, you have this mania suddenly to do this. She keeps reminding me that there's a lot of other things I wanted to do, and I haven't done them yet. And what drives me to do it? She can't quite understand it, and she's getting a bit frightened that I will go nuts, you know, not achieving anything, and it make me feel angry and unhappy and so on. She doesn't want me to do that. And of course, in the meantime, enormous amount of paperwork is created for the courts, by the courts. Class actions are the only lever we have. If a weak number of people have to take on massive industries.
We can claim Zwangsarbeiter, yeah? There was no work there.
Later
Yeah, okay, so it didn't work, so therefore we cannot claim you as slave labor.
You could never take them on your own. They have deep pockets and can take the best lawyers. So we have to do a mass action, a class action.
The party, I was there too.
You've been to Vienna?
Yeah, sure. I was in Brunel. Yeah, 1.5 years I was in Brunel.
Auschwitz-Janina, yes, we work for I.G. Farben. Brunel, yes, I.G. Farben. Landesschutz, fine.
That's it. Bleiben wir gesund.
Then you come from
Vienna. Stephen, come here.
Where are you?
Here. I'm last.
This
The
one?
last one, yes. And it was so pure accidentally that I recognized myself. We were cleaning the trains after the people who arrived and were taken off. Some were sorted out to live, and most of them was sorted out to die. It was purely accidental.
What do you feel?
Nothing.
Oh, don't be silly.
Well, I cannot say I'm proud. There's nothing to be excited over. But it's nice that you come across something like that.
BBC Radio 4.
A German court has awarded an elderly Jewish survivor of a slave labour camp over £8,000 in compensation. She was one of a group of women sold into slavery by Hitler's SS, but the judge rejected the claims of 20 others because they'd already received some money.
Today, a survivors group with similar claims took their message to the German embassy in London.
Yeah, we're all together.
After initially being denied entry, the survivors were able to put their case.
We are quiet, we're not making a fuss, we just want to talk.
The tension is now shifting from appeals against the German government to claims against the firms that use slave labor themselves. That could mean taking the battle to the American courts.
Hello.
We know who you are. We are Holocaust survivors.
Yeah.
Because a decision has been made now about 20 women and 21 women. One received and 20 who did not. And we came here to present our protest here to you, to the embassy, on behalf of the Holocaust survivors who are in England.
You want a meeting? That's fine. My name is Francis Grant. I'm the acting head of the legal department.
I see. So may we come in?
Certainly, please. But I would prefer. I mean, if you want to present something to me, I would prefer to have it without press, if you understand.
Well, in that case, can we have it here
in the lobby?
Because we want
the press is here.
We don't want to have these things behind closed doors.
I suffered not only in Germany, I suffered my whole life in this country because of the consequences of what happened to me.
We had to grab any work that was going. Some of us managed to pull ourselves by our shoestring.
I might like to make one final point. This is that most of us were expected not to be around anymore. I think we will stay around until it's settled.
I mean,
put that message across.
One man is pushing for answers. Enter Mel Weiss, a New York lawyer who punches above his weight. A friend of the president, he's poised to launch a legal challenge demanding compensation for all forced laborers employed under the Nazis.
The action could see Ford and the dock along with German firms already accused of exploiting forced labor. A company report for 1944 to 46 says Ford Cologne's supervisory board, listing an American manager as a member, was in constant contact with the day-to-day management during those years.
The lawyers quite clearly said, look, there are assets here in the States. You have subsidiaries. We might not take anything away in Germany, but we might put a lien on your assets here.
I'm doing it. See, a lot of people who have received nothing, and a lot of them need it. And you see, the people who have not received anything, they are either older and not capable of talking properly. Yes, they can't do that. That's why I'm doing it. That's why Roman is doing it. That's why. I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Have you had good feedback to the article?
Yes, very good. Most people like it. Most people feel the Mercedes-Benz advertisement is very appropriate. They're certainly one of the people who employed slave laborers. Anything which happened in the courts in the United States, the media spreads it in the papers. It can't really help selling cars, for instance.
Yes, of course.
So let's see whether you can read it.
Compensation.
Brackets UK.
UK. As first.
Our century.
Our century.
Draws to a close.
Draws to a close. And
biological
solution takes its own.
Toll, yeah?
Yeah. German.
Modern
Germans cannot sit comfortably at the top table of global democracy.
Where are we now? We lost the honor. Excuse me. I'm looking for this meeting, the Holocaust survivor meeting.
In the Elliott room?
Yeah.
Elliott room is just here behind the mirrors.
Thank you very much.
Hi there.
Hi. I'm Rudy Kennedy.
Oh, great. Come on in here.
That the major item of unfinished business has still to be finished. I've then gone on to the so-called extermination through labor, Vernichtung durch Arbeit. In the factory where Rudy worked, the average time of living was 3 months.
It may have been mass murder, but we will not be content with a mass apology. We will be content with nothing less than individual apologies and appropriate individual compensation. We have chosen Washington to make this statement because we believe that only incisive political intervention will bring us belated and deserved justice. Thank you.
Today. Seating is limited. That's 1-888-733-4648 and become as beautiful as you want to be.
Hey, just drove by to see the baby. Okay, I lied. I really want to see the new one.
How much owe you? How much? $5.50.
Now they're going after the biggest names in German industry. Volkswagen, Daimler-Benz, Siemens, BMW, Krupp, and they're demanding that they pay the Jews, Russians, and Poles and others whom they forced into slave labor. Rudy Kennedy was a slave laborer, not in a factory, but underground in a 9-mile-long network of secret tunnels in the Harz Mountains in central Germany. He was one of 60,000 slave laborers who worked in the mountain and lived at Dora, an adjoining concentration camp. They helped build some of the Nazis' most sophisticated and secret weapons, including Werner von Braun's V-2 rockets. When U.S. Army troops liberated this area in 1945, they recorded on film the slave laborers who the fleeing Nazis had left behind. Young men who'd been beaten, starved, and of course never paid. 20,000 of them died.
Rudy Kennedy,
Good evening. This 5-year-old boy is the only survivor of one of Kosovo's worst massacres. He saw 21 of his close relatives killed. His uncle found the bodies, his own wife and children among them.
I think we have to look at history. We tend to look at the brown shirts and the SS in their black uniforms, the guards. But behind them were the businessmen in gray suits who were in fact the people who ran the big companies, the boards, and they were part of the extermination of Jews. They call it Vernichtung durch Arbeit, extermination through work.
What happens? Can I take one of those?
German embassy. Just around the corner.
You know where it is?
We'll see you upstairs. It's a very important meeting. I've written a month ago to the ambassador to request a meeting with the Chancellor, Schroeder. Ambassador, together with his legal department, put themselves out in order to invite, because Mr. Schroeder couldn't come, the Federal Minister of the Chancellor's office, Mr. Homba. We have to put our point of view to Mr. Homba, clearly and strongly, so that when the decisions are made, we are not ignored.
There were a certain number of, I think it was 22 companies that have subscribed already, including Deutsche Bank and Siemens. And there are another 40 that they hope to get. It's an industrial kitty so that they can buy off legal obligations together.
We have now given the whole claims we were working on to American lawyers. And they have the initiative and they're working at it, and we get a bit frustrated because we don't know day to day what they're doing. And there have been several meetings where none of us were there, but we have still great concern on a number of issues.
Hello, Deborah.
Hi, Rudy. How are you?
I'm fine, fine. Listen, I've got Luke here. He's filming me.
Yeah.
We're composing this piece to go into the papers.
Wait a second. Hilda. Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I need to ask you a question. And this is, we're talking about compensation, we're talking about payment or financial settlement. Which is the best term to use from a legal point of view?
Compensation.
Compensation.
Yeah.
That's what I felt, yes. Okay, so that's what we're going to use.
You're natural at this then.
Beckmann?
You're a natural.
I'm a natural. Thank you.
Twelve leading companies in Germany have set up a fund to compensate people forced to work for the Nazis.
German companies are under fire for profiting from slave labor during the war. The Chancellor said German companies had a responsibility for what happened.
Dieser Fonds hat noch eine andere Funktion. Er hat nämlich, und das steht für die Bundesregierung im Vordergrund, auch die Funktion, Klagen, insbesondere Sammelklagen in den USA zu begegnen und damit Kampagnen gegen den Ruf unseres Landes und gegen die deutsche Wirtschaft den Boden zu entziehen.
But why has it taken so long? Why are you doing this now?
CBS. Is it Sherry? It's Rudy Kennedy. Hi. Listen, I'm in a hurry because I'm phoning you from a phone box in Frankfurt. I'm going to send you a fax. We sent something to Schroeder. Would you do me a favor? Can you fax it on to Deborah? And between the two of you decide whether you give it to AP or some other news, or you use it yourself. Oh, I see. So what do we do? Wie wir reingekommen sind, kommen wir auch wieder raus. Les connards de Jablot, ils n'auraient pas pu venir au centre hier.
Ich kenne ihn von Buna. Davon was sagen Sie? Eine kleine Kartoffel, so.
Yeah, I know.
Per day.
Yeah, I know, I was there.
Oh, ist das ein Schwindel. 300 bis 500 Kalorien.
Ja, noch nicht mal 20 Kalorien.
War Wasser. Ich habe sie nicht gegessen.
So what did you eat? You had,
Ich war in der Küche.
Where are you from?
Right now from Chicago.
And before that?
Auschwitz.
Wird man in Deutschland nicht viel Verständnis dafür haben, die sagen, unsere Deutschen sind aus dem Osten ebenfalls vertrieben worden, haben auch keine Entschädigung bekommen. Und dann bekomme ich heute schon anonyme Anzeigen und anonyme Postkarten. Ich kann Ihnen hier eine zeigen, wenn Sie die sehen wollen. Banken in Deutschland und in der Schweiz, Versicherungen, Generali, zu wenig, zu wenig, zu wenig. Wann kriegt ihr endlich euer gieriges Maul voll? Goldberg, Münzenberg etc. zeugt nur von der Tradition der Blutzeugen seit Jahrhunderten. Das ist eben die Stürmermentalität, die nach wie vor in Deutschland noch herrscht.
Most of us didn't know each other, but we swapped stories, and we were trying to make sure that our memory is correct and that we haven't forgotten or added to things, which is important because we're always accused by historians that
you couldn't remember what happened 50 years ago. It's extraordinary here again how correct, how the memories are burnt into us. We seem to remember what was going on. And we tell the same story, basically, although each one has a unique way of having survived.
My works manager was a witness for the defense of I.G. Farben. He's mentioned in the Nuremberg trials. He obviously was asked, did you know that people were being killed? And he said, no, the only death he knew was my father, called him Rudy's father, and he died of natural causes. My father was murdered because he was sick. He couldn't work. And if you couldn't work, IG Farben didn't pay the SS, so we did away with you.
Ja, mein Name ist Kennedy, ich habe eine wichtige Besprechung.
Mit wem bitte?
Ich weiß, ich muss meine Akten heraussuchen, ja?
I went to the offices of IG Farben in liquidation with my new documents, and I insisted that they make a photocopy of this document.
Mein Name ist Rudy Kennedy. Ja. Ich bin ein ehemaliger Arbeiter bei Ihnen, ja. Former Slave Labor. Ich habe eine Frage, ich habe jetzt Dokumente, die ich Ihnen gerne mal zeigen würde. Weil ich angekommen bin, ja, und ich wohne ja hier nicht, ich wohne von England.
Würden Sie mich bitte nicht fotografieren?
Ja. Und
wir stoßen gegen mein Persönlichkeitsrecht. Also von daher sorgen Sie bitte dafür, dass das Band abgestellt wird.
Ja. You must also understand something, when I do this, that I'm boiling inside, which also gives me, I'm not as lucid as I could be. Boiling inside? Of course. Dealing with my own suffering, it's dealing with my father, which I haven't been able to come to terms with, and I'm getting the runaround. And which is difficult, but I want them to see this, so maybe I can speak tomorrow. And they will let me speak. Okay.
Der Vater von Rudi starb. Ein ganz normaler Todesfall. Which means in English that the father of Rudi died, and it was quite a normal death.
I don't think we can go through here.
Ich begrüße euch hier zu dem Protest gegen IG Farben. Ich möchte zu Beginn meines Beitrags die Polizei auffordern, mit dem Filmen aufzuhören. Das wird auch von vielen Überlebenden hier als Provokation empfunden.
Shall I go like this? It looks a bit untidy, doesn't it?
You decide, Rudy. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. What's your feeling?
Rudy, you must make this judgment yourself. I think it certainly leaves no one in any doubt about who you are.
Okay.
Here was that meeting going on, and the papers were full of the invasion of Kosovo. You sort of said, my God, We haven't really done very much.
Das ist doch provokativ.
Ich will nur sagen, dass Sie nicht eine von denen sind. Das ist nicht provokativ. Ich war ein Arbeiter bei Ihnen gewesen.
Ja, ja.
Meine Damen und Herren, ich bitte die Kamerateams, den Saal zu verlassen. Bitte gehen Sie sofort. Es wäre mir unangenehm, dass ich Sie auffordern müsste mit Hilfe der Ordnungskräfte. Bitte tun Sie das doch nicht. Wenn Sie sich an den Herrn da bitte wenden.
Good day, Rudy.
Well, I don't know whether you can call it a good day. We had a few moments. Pretty upsetting. The terrible surroundings, the shouting crowds. I don't know whether I will go again, but that we'll have to see.
You tired?
Yeah, I'm tired.
Have enough?
Pretty well, yes. I'd rather do other things, that's for sure.
Rudy Kennedy was one of up to 10 million people forced into Hitler's labor programs. Now, after a tireless campaign, Rudy and many others like him are on the verge of receiving compensation from the German firms which employed slave labor.
I'm not sure who will be there, but there's going to be some important people. Now, I'm just a mere survivor, yes, and have survived a few camps. So I'm not actually allowed in. Although our lawyers are there, yes, I'm represented by counsel.
As negotiations get underway here in Bonn this week, it's believed 16 companies, the giants of German industry, have offered to pay $1.7 billion to settle their claims. But the New York lawyer Mel Weiss, representing some of the survivors, says with over 1 million claimants, that's simply not enough.
So it doesn't sound like the negotiations are going very well?
Well, I wouldn't say that. Negotiations of this complexity.
Well, you see, there's complete confusion because we don't even know what's on the table. The lawyers are working on some figures now, and I think our lawyers have to tell you the figures. I don't know the figures.
How's it going? It's going. It's moving forward. It's the first time we're talking about money. It's good. Yes. Always. Always optimistic. It's got to be resolved. It's been way too long. It's been way too long.
What's the next stage? What happens from here?
There's a plenary meeting where everyone's meeting, all the Eastern European delegations, the plaintiffs, survivors organizations, and industry. We'll see how it moves forward.
And the time scale in the longer term?
Another longer term. Can't say. I can't say.
And what's happening, if that falls apart, it will be our children that they will have to deal with. I guarantee you. And it will never end.
Are you optimistic?
I'm hopeful. I can't say I'm optimistic. I don't think the German industrial complexes yet are prepared to pay what's necessary. And that would be very unfortunate.
Thank you. It's been a hard struggle, but
we're not done yet. We're still struggling.
Okay.
Okay, Rudy, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. I'll see you later.
I am not an official delegate, so wherever I go, I have to smuggle myself in. I think if I wouldn't have a sense of humor, I think I would break down here, actually. They don't even want to talk to us. I mean, as far as they're concerned, we're a bloody nuisance, and you know, how dare they even come and ask the question, do they owe us money? They don't owe us any money.
not worried about. Yeah, totally. Perhaps I know something better tomorrow, yes? Something more tomorrow. Yes, absolutely, yes. Bye.